I came home after 7 years, but one sentence from my mother shattered my entire life and revealed the son I never knew existed. I hadn't been home in 7 years. 7 long years that felt both too fast and painfully slow. Years that changed me, stretched me, broke me, and rebuilt me in ways I never expected. The bus ride back felt endless. I watched the world outside the window blur into soft shapes, tall pine trees, broken fences, empty fields, and the quiet roads I used to walk as a teenager. Everything looked smaller now, like the world had aged without waiting for me. Even the sky seemed duller, the winter sun weak and pale behind clouds. When the bus finally stopped at the old station, I stepped down slowly. Cold air hit my face first, sharp, fresh, and painfully familiar. It smelled like damp earth, smoke from somewhere far away, and pine needles crushed under footsteps. The same smell I had grown up with. The same smell that held memories I couldn't forget, no matter how far I ran. My bag felt heavier on my shoulder as I walked toward my house. My heartbeat was slow but tight, as if it knew something was coming. My mother had invited me to a family dinner. Her voice on the phone had been soft, careful, too gentle. She had said, "Peter, just come home for one evening. It'll be good for all of us." Something about the way she said all of us stayed in my head the entire trip. When I reached the house, I stood outside the door for a moment, breathing in deeply, trying to prepare myself. The wooden porch creaked under my shoes, and I could hear the faint clattering of dishes inside. It felt like stepping back into a past I wasn't sure I was ready for. I knocked, though I knew the door would be unlocked. It always was in this small town. My mother opened it with a smile so warm it almost felt forced. She wrapped her arms around me tightly, as if she were afraid I would disappear again if she let go. "You're finally home," she whispered against my shoulder. But before I could even answer, I saw her. Sarah, my ex. She stood a few steps behind my mother, at the edge of the hallway, half hidden by the doorway to the living room. Her posture was still, almost frozen. She looked like she wasn't sure whether to run toward me or run away. For a moment, my breath got stuck in my throat. Sarah looked almost exactly the same, yet different enough for me to feel the 7 years between us. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling around her tired eyes. There was something fragile about her now, not weak, just worn out, like someone who had been carrying too much alone for too long. Her lips parted slightly when our eyes met. "Hi," she whispered, her voice soft, trembling in a way only I would notice. "You're back." Her voice was the same voice that once felt like my home. The same voice that once ruined me when she used it to say goodbye. I nodded, but words refused to come out. My mother, meanwhile, kept talking cheerfully, pretending the tension wasn't thick enough to cut. come inside," she insisted, pulling me in. "We've been waiting." The house felt warm but strangely suffocating. The lights were bright, the table was set nicely, and the smell of spices floated around us. Everything looked normal, too normal, as if someone had staged it for a picture. But the air between me and Sarah, that wasn't normal. 7 years ago, we had been everything to each other. We grew up together. We dreamed together. We loved each other with a sincerity that felt too big for this small town. And then she left. Just disappeared from my life with a few broken words and tears she wouldn't explain. "I can't stay," she had said. "It's better if I go." "I'm sorry." And then nothing. No reasons, no closure, no answers. For 7 years, I carried that wound everywhere I went. Now she was standing in my house again, as if time had folded itself back. As my mother guided me inside, I looked around and noticed how clean everything was, spotless, almost unnaturally perfect. Even the chairs were positioned too neatly, the plates arranged with too much care. Something about it felt staged, like someone wanted this evening to look smooth on the surface, even if everything underneath was cracking. "Sit, both of you," my mother said, waving her hands as she brought out dishes. I sat across from Sarah. She kept her eyes on the table for a long time, twisting her fingers in her lap, avoiding my gaze. Her hand shook slightly, just enough for me to see, not enough for my mother to notice. I wondered if she was scared, or guilty, or both. "Long time," I finally said, my voice low. She looked up slowly. Our eyes met again, and something unspoken passed between us. Pain, memory, unfinished words, maybe regret too. "Yeah, Long time, she whispered back, barely audible. My mother came and sat with us, smiling too brightly. It feels like nothing has changed, she said. It's good to have everyone together again. Everyone. The word felt heavy. Were we everyone? Was this really just a dinner? Something inside me said no. As we began eating, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had walked into a moment I wasn't ready for. Every movement Sarah made, the way she lifted her fork, the way she avoided my eyes, the way she pressed her lips together, all of it told me she was carrying something inside her. Something she didn't know how to say. There was tension in the room, but it wasn't the kind that came from old lovers meeting again. It was deeper, colder, like a truth waiting in the corner, watching us quietly. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken memories. I remembered her laughter echoing across the lake cottage, the sunlight hitting her hair, her hand warm in mine as we sat on the porch talking about our future. I remembered her tears on the last day. How she couldn't look me in the eye. How she walked away without giving me the truth. And now here she was again, sitting across from me as if fate had circled back. My mother talked and talked, filling the silence with stories, questions, and laughter that felt slightly unnatural. Almost like she was trying too hard to keep the air light. But no matter how hard she tried, I could feel something underneath the moment, a quiet pressure building, a weight that grew heavier with every passing second. This wasn't just a dinner. This wasn't just a reunion. Something was coming. Something none of us were ready for. Something my mother had planned. Something Sarah feared. Something I was about to walk straight into. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt a cold shiver run through my spine, a warning. I didn't know what it meant yet. But I knew one thing clearly. Tonight was going to change everything. Dinner started quietly at first, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that sits between people with too much history, too much hurt, and too many unspoken questions. Every small sound felt louder, the clink of a spoon, the scratch of a chair, the soft tapping of Sarah's fingers on the table. My mother talked more than usual, filling the room with words the way someone fills cracks with cement. But even her cheerful tone couldn't hide the tension pressing down on the table like invisible weight. I barely touched my food. I kept looking at Sarah, trying to read her face the way I used to, but everything about her was guarded now. Her shoulders curled inward. Her eyes kept dropping to the table or drifting toward the window, anywhere but toward me. She looked like someone fighting with herself. As for me, I felt a storm inside my chest. Memories, anger, questions, everything swirled without mercy. My mother interrupted the silence again. So, she said too brightly, you two remember the cottage near the lake, right? You spent so much time there, before everything. Her voice softened at the end, but the words still cut deep. Sarah's hand froze halfway to her glass. Her eyes lowered immediately. A flash of pain crossed her face, quick, but sharp enough for me to catch. My heart tightened. The cottage. I could almost see it, the old wooden house, the sun reflecting on the water, the porch where we once dreamed together. Her laughter. My plans. Our future. All of it shattered 7 years ago. I swallowed hard, pushing the memory aside. But my mother didn't stop. You loved that place, she continued. I remember how you two would sit on the porch for hours. Please, Sarah whispered, so quietly my mother didn't hear. But I did. Ich zerrte her. She was avoiding something, not just the topic, but something deeper. Something painful. My mother smiled and kept talking, completely unaware of the way Sarah's hands trembled. It was strange, almost unsettling, how my mother seemed completely unaffected by the tension, as if she didn't notice the emotional hurricane sitting across from her. I finally forced myself to speak. How have you been, Sarah? Her eyes lifted slowly to mine, and for a moment, she looked like the girl I once knew, scared, soft, and honest. I've been managing, she murmured. Her voice cracked just slightly, but she hit it quickly. Managing. Not living. Not happy. Just managing. Something inside me twisted at that word. After we finished most of the meal, she finally dared to speak again, her voice barely above a breath. You must hate me. The words hit me straight in the chest. I don't hate you, I replied, though my voice wasn't steady. I just never got the truth. She shut her eyes for a moment, as if bracing herself against a wave of pain. When she opened them again, they glistened, not exactly tears, but something close. "I wanted to tell you," she whispered. "I really did." My stomach tightened. "Tell me what?" She shook her head slowly. "I can't, not like this." Her gaze flickered toward my mother, and I suddenly understood something, not clearly, but enough to feel it deep in my bones. This wasn't just guilt. This wasn't just shame. She was afraid. Of what? Of whom? I didn't know yet. But her eyes told me she had been carrying this fear for years. My mother stood up and began clearing the plates, humming quietly, too calmly. As she moved about the kitchen, her humming sounded like an attempt to cover something, to hide something. After dessert was served, the room felt even heavier. I watched Sarah push food around her plate without eating it. Her hands were shaking again. Every time my mother spoke, she tensed slightly, just enough for me to notice. Nothing about this felt normal anymore. There was a moment, a small one, when our eyes met again. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The girl who left me 7 years ago, she hadn't left because she stopped loving me. There was something else. Something she wasn't allowed to say. Something that had been forced on her. I didn't know how I knew it, but I felt it. And that feeling made me suddenly, painfully aware of the past. Flashback. 7 years ago, we had been standing by the lake. It was late evening, the sky painted with orange and pink. Sarah had been crying so hard her voice kept breaking when she spoke. "We can't be together anymore," she'd said. "I am sorry." I had begged her to tell me why. I had asked her over and over, what happened? What changed? What did I do? But she had refused to answer. She only stood there shaking, her fingers clutching her necklace, the same necklace she was touching now at the dinner table, and looked at me with a pain I couldn't understand. Then she walked away. I never knew what broke her. I never knew why she left. Not until tonight, when I saw that same fear in her eyes again. Back in the present, her voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Tonight, you'll know," she whispered. She didn't look at me when she said it. Her eyes were fixed on her plate, her fingers twisting the necklace again. She looked like someone preparing herself for a truth that might destroy her, or set her free. I didn't know which. My pulse quickened. My palms grew warm. Something inside me stirred, something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not hope. Not even love. Just the unmistakable pull of truth. Truth that had been buried. Truth that had been twisted. Truth that had been stolen. My mother smiled at us from across the table, acting as if this was just a normal dinner, as if nothing dangerous sat between us. But I felt it. Sarah felt it. This night wasn't meant to be peaceful. This night had been leading to something hidden in the shadows of the past. Something dark. Something that had controlled both our lives without us knowing. As I sat there, watching Sarah's trembling hands, I realized something else. She wasn't only hiding something. She had been forced to hide something. And tonight it would finally come out. Whatever it was. I knew it would change everything. The plates had barely been cleared when my mother's voice sliced through the room like a cold knife. "Well," she said with a too sweet smile, "since everyone is finally together, we've made a decision." I felt the air shift. It was subtle, a small drop in warmth, a tightening around my chest, but it was enough to make me sit straighter. Sarah went completely still beside me, her breath catching in her throat. My mother continued speaking in a tone that tried to sound cheerful but failed. "We've decided to pass the lake cottage to Sarah." The room froze. My heart stopped, then kicked painfully against my ribs. I stared at her, not sure I heard her correctly. The cottage. My inheritance. The place my father promised would be mine. My voice came out low, controlled. "What?" She lifted her chin proudly, almost as if expecting applause. "Yes. The cottage his parents gave you." She tapped the table softly. "We feel it makes more sense for Sarah to have it." Everything inside me went quiet. Not calm, just silent, the way the sea pulls back before a huge wave hits. I turned my eyes to Sarah. She looked like she had been slapped. Her face was pale, her fingers gripping the edge of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. "No," she whispered. "Please, don't do this now." Her voice shook with real fear, not just discomfort. Fear. My mother ignored her, her smile returning, sharper than before. She needs it more than you do, she said firmly. And after everything, she deserves a safe place to live, especially while raising a child alone. My fork slipped from my hand and hit the floor. A child. The word echoed through me like thunder. I turned slowly towards Sarah. She looked down instantly, a tear sliding down her cheek before she could wipe it away. My mother folded her arms, completely calm. Don't look so shocked. You left. Life moved on. I wasn't even listening to her anymore. My entire world narrowed to one point, the trembling woman beside me. A child? I asked, my voice barely a sound. Sarah nodded weakly, her fingers shaking as they pressed against a necklace, the same one she touched every time she was scared. I tried to tell you, she whispered. I tried so many times. My heart hammered in my chest, painful and heavy. Is the child mine? I asked. Her answer came without hesitation, without hiding, without any attempt to soften the truth. He's 7, she said softly. A tear dropped onto her lap. He has your eyes. The floor felt like it tilted under my feet. 7 years. 7 years of wondering why she left. 7 years of believing she disappeared because she stopped loving me. 7 years of living with anger that was never meant for her. My mother stood with her back straight, arms crossed proudly. You were young, she said as if explaining a simple decision. You had opportunities. A child would have ruined everything for you. My stomach turned. She wasn't defending herself. She was justifying what she did. You knew. I whispered. Of course, she replied. I told her to leave before she destroyed your life. You should thank me. My hands trembled in my lap, not with rage, but with the kind of grief that feels like drowning. My breath came out slowly, burning on its way out. I looked at Sarah again. Her face was full of guilt, fear, heartbreak, but also a desperate hope that maybe, finally, the truth was out. She cried silently, her shoulders shaking. I wanted you to know. But she said. Her voice cracked. She said you'd never forgive me. She said you'd hate me. She said I ruined your future. My mother's voice cut in. I was protecting you. I stared at her, the woman who raised me, who taught me right from wrong, who always claimed to love me more than anything. You kept my child from me, I whispered, disbelief mixing with heartbreak. You took 7 years of his life away from me. She had the audacity to shrug. You left town. You chose your path. I stood up slowly. Everything inside me settled into a painful stillness. Not loud anger, not shouting, not chaos. Just clarity. Cold, sharp, final clarity. I turned to Sarah. Her eyes were pleading, terrified I would walk away. But I didn't. I reached out and gently lifted her chin so she would look at me. I want to meet my son, I said softly, even though my voice shook. I want to know everything. From you. Not from her. She nodded quickly, tearful relief pouring across her face. I'll tell you everything. I promise. My mother slammed her hand on the table. You're making a mistake. You don't need to be involved with them. The cottage. I cut her off with a quiet, steady voice that didn't sound like mine. The cottage is not yours to give. Her mouth opened in shock. But I wasn't done. You spent years controlling everything. My choices, my future, even my past. I stepped closer to her. But you don't control me anymore. She tried to reach for my arm. Beat her. I pulled away gently but firmly. No, I said. You don't get to call me that right now. Those words broke something in her expression. Pride, control, power, all of it cracked. I turned back to Sarah. Let's go, I told her quietly. She stood on trembling legs, wiping her tears, and followed me to the door. She didn't look back. I didn't either. Once we stepped outside, the cold night wrapped around us, but it felt cleaner than the suffocating air inside the house. Sarah stood beside me, shaking. I didn't want you to find out like that, she whispered. I shook my head gently. I'm just glad I finally know. The street was empty. The wind was soft. The world felt strangely quiet, as if holding its breath. I took a slow breath and said the line that came from the deepest part of me. The part that had been wounded for 7 years and finally understood where the real betrayal came from. You kept my child from me. I looked back at the house one last time, not with anger, but with a sense of final truth. But now you've lost me forever. The door behind us stayed closed. And for the first time in 7 years, I walked toward a future that was truly mine.